And by call issue, it says, why is the government busy with declassification to allow for land use incompatible with the area's forest reserve status, when what is really needed is sound policy and investment to make the area the ecological lungs and hearts of Accra? That's the question he asked there. The very last story on the front page, I should point out, is the punished developer for pulling down Bulgarian embassy building. So Enquire recommends, and we set up somebody to do that anyway.
Right, so the Daily Guide, Kojo Boateng goes for Eastern Region NPP chairman. Terrorist Eye Ghana, Achimota Forest Intact, the minister story is here. Napo bags Best Minister Award.
Now, the chronicle for this morning, Philippians chapter 4, verse 19. And my God will supply every need of yours according to his riches in glory in Christ Jesus. BOG data reveals mobile money transactions hit 1 trillion, up from 155 billion in 2017. Be vigilant with your personal security. Terrorist threat is real. Kandapa and bullion van robbery. 2 more suspects in court. NPA CEO gets Top Africa Award. And Achimota Forest not sold minister.
Now, the Ghanaian Times is saying Ghana is home to 476,400 migrants, and that's the IOM declaring, and says country now origin, transit, and destination for migrants. And there's national security warning to the public source on the front page here. In Kranza, youth attack police over death of 28-year-old trader. That's also on the front page of the Ghanaian Times.
The Finder, the big story there is State Society failing children as 2,791 report human rights infractions to SHRAJ in 2021. Child Rights blames lack of social and political commitment.
Now, the Business and Financial Times, AFTA will not succeed without SMEs' participation, according to the Secretary General of AFTA, Wamkele Mene. ECG debt to IPPs hit $900 million. Market anticipates further policy rate hike, and CEO Summit pushes for ease of doing business law. All right, so guys, yesterday in Nkranza, this is what transpired. So those were gunshots from Nkranza yesterday as youth clashed with the police. Now, this morning, we've been joined by our correspondent, Ohimi Teria. He's still in Nkranza. He's been helping us understand the situation in Nkranza. He joins us on the phone. And joining us on Zoom is security analyst and head of academic affairs of the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Professor Kwesi Ening. Good morning, Professor Kwesi Ening, and good morning to you also, Ohimi Teria.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, Winston.
Great. Now, let me start off with you, Ohimi Teria. So, what's the situation in Nkranza today?
I would say the situation here is that of relative calm, because when we woke up this morning, the youth who we witnessed yesterday had grouped and even attacked the police station. The groupings are no longer here, but just that the police and military team, their presence has been increased, and some of the major streets in Kranza have been blocked, and there are others being manned by the police and the military team, especially the entry points, as vehicles move in from, say, Ejura and Sechedumase and other adjoining communities. Motorists have to stop for their vehicles to be searched and then given the passage by the police and the military team before you are allowed to enter the community. And beyond this, some of the routes have also been blocked, meaning that there's also, passengers and the motorists will have to change their route before they are able to enter Nkranza proper. But I must say, it's a normal day, just that you see the road barricades mounted by the youth, and then the bench side, the remains that still remain on the street. as police and military team continue to patrol. School children are going to school. I've seen many of them dressed in their uniforms, and then residents are going about their normal duties. But in front, especially of the municipal police headquarters that came under attack yesterday, is where the police team is stationed, and their vehicles, the FPU vehicles are here. The water cannons are also here, and I've seen the number increase this morning with some of the personnel joining their colleagues here in Nkranza, Winston.
Now, yesterday the police issued a statement. They talked about how the young man, Albert Donko, died. They said he was engaged in robbery and died as a result. Earlier, in all your reports, you had told us also about how he was picked up from home and, kept in police custody. And there's been questions about how he died. How are the people in Nkranza reacting to this statement from the police, particularly his family?
For the family, they remain resolute that the young man, 28-year-old Albert Donko, a trader, a footballer, and also digital satellite installer, was picked from his Kasajan home at about 2 a.m. in the presence of the mother and other residents who were awoken by the noise emanating as police banged on the main door of the house and even the window of the suspect or the deceased. In that regard, they were awakened to that scene. So residents of Kasajan will never agree to any suggestion from the police that the suspect or the deceased, was killed at the robbery scene. All that they understand and know is that the gentleman was asleep at about 2 a.m. when he returned from a visit to one of his relatives. And then it was at that point that he was picked by a team of police officers, 6 of them in an unregistered private vehicle. And even when the mother tried to join them, they sped off. The mother went to the Nkranza police station as a follow-up in the same hour. That was around 2 a.m. Met the gentleman at the Nkranza police station, had words with him, and when it was getting to the dawn on that particular day, she decided to go home and then dress properly and come back to the police station. She returned only to be told that the gentleman has been sent to Techiman, the regional police headquarters, so she had to follow up. She followed up to the Techiman police station, and it was there that she was asked to go back to Ejira to check whether the son has been sent there. The mother continued to Ejira, and at Ejira, she was also told the son has not been brought there. She came back to Techiman, and they asked him to go to nearby Forikurum, where she went and checked. But still the same, the story hasn't changed. The gentleman was not there until she came back to Nkranza police station and was asked again to go to Techiman. So in all this narration from the relatives and then the family, they believe that there has been attempted ploy. There's a ploy by police to conceal, some vital information. The mother and the family wouldn't see the late Donko until after 3 weeks when they went back to the Techiman police station, and the police told them they should go to Accra, and that upon the request for a note from the police, that is when they went to Accra to ascertain and verify whether the gentleman was alive or dead. And it was at that point that the family said they were told the gentleman is dead. So for the family to hear that the gentleman was killed at the robbery scene is something that they can't fathom. They wouldn't believe what they describe as the cock and bull story from the police to conceal their bad deeds. So that is what has actually angered residents of Nkranza, and it's been talk of the town that after that particular day before that particular night, the gentleman was picked up in his Kasajan home. He had already, divulged information to some of his friends that he bumped into a robbery scene, and he actually saw some police officers involved. That has been the speculation in town, and people suspect that probably that could be the reason why he was picked up. But unfortunately, we cannot independently verify as whether it is true that the gentleman saw some police officers allegedly been involved in the robbery incident. And so residents are angered by the fact that this is a gentleman who has been trading in the community. He sells ice water to even make a living. So why would somebody suspect that it's an armed robber? And that's what has angered majority of the residents, especially the youth, who have been asking questions, demanding answers, especially explanations as to why the gentleman was killed. Yesterday, when the regional minister, Kwesi Edujan, met the press, he also expressed the same sentiment that as RESEC chairman, he has been, trying as much as possible to get details as to what happened to the gentleman after he was picked and sent to the Techiman police station. But the most important thing, all the information he could get as RESEC chairman is the fact that after Techiman, that probably was the end of the gentleman. And there's no any other detail apart from what he said. He expects the IGP to be briefing the nation on the details of how the young man was picked from his home at Kasejan and never returned. And now it's being speculated that the gentleman has been has been killed and his body sent to the police hospital morgue in Accra.
Great. Please hold on, Ohime. Let's get to Professor Kwesi. Now, Professor Kwesi, there's an issue that, according to residents, happened some 3 weeks ago, and they only got to know after 3 weeks that the young man had died. We've seen the police statement. What's your general view on how this case has been handled?
Well, let me say good morning to your listeners. Certainly listening to your correspondent, it raises more questions than answers.
Okay.
That's number one. Number two, we are hearing of leading citizens in Nkranza raising their voices and questioning the behavior and performance of the police. Number three relates to how this will impact, this particular case will impact on police community relations as a whole. Number four, and this I've stated consistently, must take cognizance of the trigger happiness with which police officers are using violence against citizens of this country. And were we to do a study spanning the last 18 months, I mean, they are extremely disturbing individual cases across Ghana in which police officers have used unreasonable force against citizens, resulting in injuries and deaths. Finally, is the need for headquarters, police headquarters, to respond more rapidly when societies begin to raise their voices about how local policing is done. And here once more, I want to particularly recommend the IGP, because when this story broke, I think he quickly responded that he was going to send people there or start an investigation of sorts.
Sure.
You know, it is critical, particularly taking into consideration where we are located, what is happening around us and within us, that the trust that is between communities and their local law enforcement officers, that trust is maintained, strengthened, built upon, so that the free flow of information becomes a normal routine. Now, if I heard Ohime tell me right, that this individual possibly chanced on a situation where individuals who may be in police clothing were probably involved in some robberies.
Sure.
Now, I've stated this consistently. As we travel on Ghana's highways, the performance and the behavior of a few bad nuts in the Ghana Police Service leaves a lot to be desired. The intimidation, the deliberate, blatant extortion of money from passengers, from drivers, the lies around the usage of, is it what they call it, speed gun or whatever they call it?
Exactly, speed gun, yes.
Yeah, okay, intimidating drivers in instances where the vehicle is not doing that particular speed. So there's a credibility gap here. I've stated this and let me repeat it. Because IGP Dr. Dampare seeks to transform the service, located within the service are groups of bad nuts who have also sworn that they will ensure that they will make the IGP's work difficult. I'm not their IGP. I've been speaking to him for weeks, but I can assure them that they will not win because they are also decent, dignified, professional officers within the service who are driven by a desire to deliver professional services to the people of Ghana. But this is going to be a long, difficult, nasty battle because there are people in the police service who for years, have had a free run, intimidated people, consulted with all kinds of people who ought to have been in prison. There are cases of renting guns out, renting their uniforms out. So we have a police service that, irrespective of the rhetoric from around 2016-17, that we want a police service that is world-class, the introduction of a strategic plan, that within the service itself, there are people who have not bought into this idea. And that raises further questions about how some of these individuals got into the service. Okay. So this is a much broader discussion about professional behavior and conduct, about leadership, about the role of parliament, because they have the overall oversight, the quality and nature of political direction, because with the explosion in our population, law enforcement, crowd control become very critical to protecting the state, its communities, and citizens. Finally, if we once more look back the last 18 months or 24 months, the frequency with which citizens think they have been offended, their rights abused, and therefore attacking a police station is a legitimate response, is beginning to increase. And the usage of particularly violent approaches is very disturbing. But let me sound a word of caution here. When you strike a blow against legitimate authorities of the state, even when they have committed crimes against you, because there are avenues for resolving those challenges and for reporting them, then the response that comes back is usually disproportionate force. So I think people should be extremely cautious in striking a blow against police officers, police buildings, attacking military officers, their vehicles, all those things. We saw it in Nigeria. But there's also a responsibility for these institutions to use their intelligence networks to ensure that they can understand, pick up signals of instances where communities feel aggrieved and the local law enforcement officers are slow in responding to community needs. Because the more these frustrations are bottled up, the more violent the responses. So I'm hoping that Dr. Dampare once more will find out what has happened, use his networks. Let's get the culprits who are involved in the shooting, the original arrest, and let's bring this under control. Okay. Because we saw it in a draft. When we spoke, some of us spoke about an underlying sense of frustration and anger, generally, not only against the police and other uniformed services, but a general sense of frustration, a sense of exclusion, and a sense of victimhood. It was dismissed. But post-Adria, we have also seen quite a number of cases.
Okay.
Finally, yes, please.
Yes,
finally,
please go ahead, yes.
Is the role of the local security councils. Winston, we have a national security strategy document that locates the individual Ghanaian at the center of our national security strategy. That says respecting the human being, the human life of a Ghanaian is what must drive that agenda. So we saw how when the strategy document came out, Inspector Azugu and 2 other military officers were shunted from the National Security Secretariat because it was felt by Mr. Kandapa that their behavior over time was undermining the strategy. It looks to me as if, particularly the police service, has, and some of its personnel, haven't heard about the document, the principles inherent in them, and how they should treat ordinary Ghanaian citizens. So there's a lot of work, Winston, that we need to do, but it's going to be an uphill battle.
And talking about a lot of work, some have called for an independent probe and investigation into this particular issue. Would you support such a call?
Well, we saw the independent probe into the Adria case and certainly the conclusions. I don't think it is just the word, the independence that matters. It is the terms of reference and the knowledge of the individuals who sit on it, their bravery in seeking to get or come to grips with what led to the case that they are dealing with, but also to be bold to make recommendations about the general trend that they see as the particular case that they are sitting on is emblematic of. So yes, we need some inquiry of sorts, but it should not only be limited to Adria. Crowd control is a big problem for the Ghana Police Service. And almost every single public inquiry around the Ghana Police Service has always dealt with crowd control, as far back as 1965-67. So there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. And in the Adria case, we are seeing how once more the blatant use of live ammunition causes problems and leads to the loss of life.
So in this case, yes, the crowd control is an issue, but there's also the question about circumstances leading to even the death of Albert Donko. Now, some have raised concerns and have said this just looks like the same script with a bullion van. He was, killed in a shootout. In their case, they were led to on an intelligence operation, and there was a shootout. The 2 of them died. This person, his family say, we saw him. He was picked in the house, sent to the police station. The police say he died in exchange with the police as part of some robbery. Do we need an independent investigation, not conducted by the police, to also identify the cause of death of Albert Donko?
Oh, yeah, sure. Here, pathologists and forensic experts can actually get this done very quickly. More often than not, we tend to be quite blasé about, how this work needs to be done. But I'm particularly disturbed also by the loud silence of the Parliamentary Committee on Defense and Interior that has oversight responsibilities for the Ghana Police Service amongst other security institutions. I mean, why the silence? Particularly when the deputy chair of that committee was a former police personnel.
As in the deputy ranking member, Peter
Yes.
Tobu? Yes.
So one would have expected a certain interest in saying, how do we use our parliamentary processes to help the police service, to perform in a manner that citizens will feel more comfortable, will feel that this is their police service, but there's this loud silence that I find both unacceptable and very disturbing.
Finally, you talked about how a frustration within the society, the feeling of victimhood, as you put it. Is it the case that people within the country have become frustrated, feel hurt, and so take advantage of these situations to vent their anger?
I think this is best answered by a criminologist or a psychologist, but let me take a shot at it. When people feel that the state is not delivering adequate social welfare goods, then all those who represent the state become outlets for the expression of that sense of exclusion, of victimhood, and of dispossession. So the tipping point for expressing that anger towards representatives of the state is extremely low. The least trigger, they will strike a blow. But I'm sounding a word of caution that anyone who strikes a blow against the state is resisted not by the police service, but actually is resisted by the armed force. Okay, so whilst we may be frustrated, we may have a sense of exclusion, and we may feel victims of some of the policies and behavior of state representatives, we've consistently got to fight to make effective the established institutions and the processes for having those heads dealt with. They may not be effective, they may be extremely slow, but they always provide better responses and feedback than using violence. Violence hardly ever solves any problems.
Okay, now you talked about how, in the police service, there are some persons who have gotten into the police service, they've been engaging in terrorizing, they've been engaging in frustrating people. Some are also engaged in criminal activities, and you say the police have an uphill task. Let me just find out from you. First, what should the police do in getting these persons out of the service? And is it even doable?
No, it's not. No, it's not. Now you made me laugh, and I guess I deserve a cup of coffee from you.
Please get one.
No. I think if we go back to the Edra case, and you saw some of the armed people around, they had bushy beards. I think one person had a ponytail with something tied around his head. Look, it's become a problem in terms of the quality of the recruitment, the processes that people get into the service, the excessive politicization of the process itself, leading to a hollowing out of the institutional ethos of the Ghana Police Service. This is not an IGP problem. It is those who have political clout to say, look, the Ghana Police Service is a frontline law enforcement institution that needs to protect all of us. And therefore, we want the best and the brightest to get in there. But we have politicians making wild promises on the campaign trail and having to ensure that their supporters get something to do. Okay? And therefore we see all these people who may not on the surface of it be qualified getting into some of these institutions. Now, when the numbers hit a certain critical mass, they begin to dilute the institutional ethos.
Have we gotten to that stage? Have we gotten to that stage?
We are heading towards that.
We're heading towards that. But if we cannot weed them out, it means we're in for trouble then.
We are in trouble. No, Winston, there is no way that this can be packaged. Now, this has been a problem that has been going on probably for 30 years or so. And that is why when you get an inspector general who has come into the job driven by a desire to bring about fundamental change, not in terms of, drawing up highfalutin documents, but a hands-on operational approach that says, you know what, you may have come in the wrong way, you may want to adulterate the culture of the service, but I'm not going to give you the chance to do that. But they are a lot. I can't put a figure on the numbers. But if you see the misbehavior across the country by uniformed officers on the roads, I mean, I met an officer or a couple of people who had erected a barrier, and you could see that, look, this was a temporary thing. So the officer came to my car and I asked him, but where is your name? I should be able to identify you as an officer. Then he retorts, we are on a special operation, so our names must not be shown. So I told my driver, drive off. This guy may be an armed robber.
Okay.
Okay? I mean, they stopped me on the way to Cape Coast. They seek to extort money. Once I was stopped at 4:30 a.m., supposedly for jumping a red light, which I never do. But they chased me down, stopped my car, asked me for 400 cedis. I said no. And then they said, look, you have to follow us to the airport police station. Now, I'm saying this story because where the arrest took place at 4:30 a.m. was near the Tesano police station, but they wanted airport police station in particular. The question then is, why the airport police station? Okay, when they realized that the shakedown was not going to work, one of them was smart enough, came, showed a touch on my face, and I said, oh, Masa, I think we have made a mistake. Okay, that is the kind of people we are dealing with. That is not the service that we are looking for. That is the challenge that Dr. Dampare has.
Finally,
that the people who wear the uniform themselves have become a challenge, not only to the two of us and the citizenry, but also to the service itself.
Finally, for the optimists, they would say something can be done. At least we can start from somewhere. Where do we start from?
I think Dr. Dampare and his leadership have demonstrated that whilst institutions are important, leadership is equally important. I think the leadership of Dr. Dampare, Madam Habib, and all the people around him, their hands-on approach to policing, the speed with which they are at a site of some abuse of some sort, their willingness to get onto the phone and talk to victims. That is sending a signal that the previous way of doing policing will change, is changing. But it's also a difficult task, that there are bad people who are embedded in the system, but we will root them out. This is going to be a long struggle, but I think Dr. Dampare and his team will win. I'm very confident.
Thank you very, very much, Professor Kwesi Ening, for joining us this morning. We're grateful to you.
Thank you.
Joy 99.7 FM.
This is a bank, First Atlantic Bank, a shiny purple star to brighten up my day. First Atlantic Bank, professionally different services all day long. First Atlantic Bank, and it feels so